It says we're live.
All right, we should be good.
Hello, Will.
Hello, David.
Hello, Adele. We are going good.
Doing good.
And hello, everybody, and welcome to our last Common Descent podcast live stream of the year. This is a first, in fact, for us. We are doing a special live stream for all of our fans on the other side of the world, one of whom is here in the live stream with us. Adele, I can't imagine that there are many of our audience at this point who don't know who you are. But please introduce yourself and mention, of course, where you're coming from.
It's really good.
Oh, hang on 1 second. We're getting notes that you might be muted. Adele is muted. Hang on.
No, it's not your fault. I realize what it is. Doot. OBS reset.
Yes.
So now, Adele, if you say something.
Hello.
There you go.
Can you
Yes.
hear me now?
There we go. Fantastic.
Great.
And let me get it back to correct visuals.
All right.
There.
Technical difficulties have been addressed. They should be able to hear you. I'm so sorry, everybody. Adele, please say the things that you were saying, but start over.
Okay, no worries. I have been sick lately as well, so it is funny to be like, can't hear Adele.
Yeah, we'll blame it on that. OBS caught that whatever, and we had to fix it.
I should have really stopped kissing Obi. Anyway, yes. So my name is Adele Pentland. My pronouns are she, her. I am the host of the podcast Pals in Paleo, which was featured as part of the Spotlight series for 2024. So all this year, Common Descent have talked with and had conversations with other paleo podcasters. And I got to be the first episode that came out earlier this year, episode 1 in the 2024 series. So in addition to also doing a podcast, I'm a part-time PhD candidate at Curtin University. I work on pterosaurs and dinosaurs. My research has been mentioned on the podcast before.
Yes,
at least twice.
I don't have the episode numbers off the top of my head.
I have one of them.
Bad friend.
I think 194 was one of them because it's on my list.
And we also have we are terrible at keeping track of which newses were for which episodes. People will ask every now and then, it's like, which episode did you talk about that? No clue.
This year,
news is a blur.
Episode 194, one of our newses was about Haliskaya.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. Haliskaya is the proper Latin way.
All right.
I do not speak with a Latin accent. I say Haliskia.
Oh, great.
I like Haliskia.
Anyway.
Haliskia, which was published by Adele et al. Earlier this year.
Yeah. And I am coming to you from the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people, and I would like to pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and recognise that sovereignty was never ceded. This was and always will be Aboriginal land.
Absolutely.
Yes. We are so happy to have you here. We were thrilled that you helped us kick off the Spotlight series, which was a roaring success. We just recently released the last episode of that series at the beginning of this month. Actually, one of the other guests from the Spotlight series is in the chat.
Oh, yeah.
Here. Travis is here.
Hi, Travis.
Travis!
Who we did not invite to be on the live stream with us, which didn't seem to me like an awkward moment until Travis showed up in the comments and I went, "Ugh, no, that's awkward, isn't it?" Sorry, Travis.
Next one.
Yes.
Next time we'll bring
Travis
you
on.
Absolutely.
Travis is the host of Fossils and Fiction. They have a new co-host as well, Ursa Fjeld, who has also been a guest on Pals and Paleo. But yes, Dr. Travis Holland is what is it? Senior lecturer in communications at Charles Sturt University, and has been doing the podcast Fossils and Fiction. Has written a book chapter, at least a book chapter, about Jurassic Park, but also like the way the women are perceived in it and their roles and all that cool stuff. Really, yeah, amazing conversations with Travis. So if you haven't, again, listened to Spotlight 2024, what are you doing? Because you also talked to Travis for that series as well, didn't you? Or did I fever dream that?
Yeah.
No, we did, Travis.
Okay, great.
We had an overabundant. Our cup overfloweth with Australians for our Spotlight series. There's a bunch of people here in the comments. A lot of familiar names. Serpentine is here, as we expected. Gemfire, Ryan. A number of names that we don't normally see, which I assume means that
They're all my friends.
Yeah.
Well, they're people from, this is the target audience, people who are awake at this time.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, because that's the whole reason we're doing this live stream, is because our live streams so often miss the Australian time zones. And so we wanted to try to do at least one live stream that was convenient for you all.
To properly express how much Will and I love our fans on the other side of the world. It is 5 o'clock in the morning here in U.S. Eastern Time, which is a truly atrocious time to be awake and also have to be like energetic and stuff.
And work with computers.
And work with computers, which is going great so far. But we are absolutely thrilled. Audience, so I saw somebody in here who said, what was it? I think it was Rhino who said, "What's this chat about? I just saw Australia and thought, let's go." Yeah, that's the goal.
Yes.
The way that this is going to work is we're going to chit-chat with Adele a bit. I've got some things that I definitely want to give you a chance to highlight. And then audience, say stuff in the comments and we will respond to you. We will say hello to you. JR says, "Appreciate you waking up early," which is an extremely cute thing to say. That's adorable that someone might assume that we woke up early for this.
I was playing Lego Star Wars 10 minutes ago.
Yes, we will sleep. We will sleep after this. Fantastic. So Adele, this is our Australia live stream, so we are going to keep the conversation fairly Australia-centric.
Absolutely.
I realize that I don't have any like Australia-themed clothes to wear, but I do have
a crocodile.
I do have
Dundee
Adele-themed clothing. So I wore, I don't know if it's visible in the thing. Oh no, I'm falling over. This is my pterosaur shirt.
Ooh.
This is not an Australian pterosaur.
No,
this
it
is
not.
Tapahara.
It's Gondwanan.
Tupan, yes. But there we go.
Tupandactylus.
Tupandactylus, I think.
Yeah. Nice.
Adele, this was, I think, 2024 was your second year of Pals and Paleo? Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Cool. How did it go? What's new in Pals and Paleo?
Ooh, yes, I had the goal of trying to get episodes out every 2 weeks. Started strong, like any good New Year's resolution, and then life happened, and I got back on the bandwagon. Then I fell off again, but that's okay. Yeah, it's been an incredible year. So I just looked at my Spotify Wrapped for like podcast stuff. And it was like gains of 500 and 600%. And I'm pretty sure I posted it to Instagram and said, "This is the common descent effect."
Yes.
Because there's like a big like uptick in
like in
number
March
of downloads and stuff. And of course, everyone starts at episode 1 always, which for me was Onomalocaris. And I have the Yowie. My friend Ruri got it for me the other day. So yes, that is still number 1. I'm just like, why don't start at that one? Anything but that. No, please. But no, it's been a really good year. Yeah. Also did my first live recording for a podcast episode with the dodgiest setup ever. So literally we're in a town hall. All the other guests have been on the podcast previously. So it was super fun. Some of my favorite people in the world. It was for a panel discussion for National Science Week, which for us here in Australia is during the month of August. But yes, essentially, I just set up my laptop. Didn't even have the laptop charging. Just put the laptop and the microphone in front of a big speaker. Put these $2 headphones in. Listen to it. I'm like, all right, let's go. And then sent it off to Francie, my editor, who has been like so just a massive support this year as well, and was like, please help fix pretty it up as I normally do. But yes, no, it's been a really good year. I am looking forward to getting back into things, but next year I have to finish my PhD, so I meant to hand my thesis in December. But I also have a SciComm job as well to do school incursions, and then there's also a mentorship role thing that I'll be doing, which I'll announce officially on Tuesday. So yes, we'll still be trying to juggle this and find time to do Pals and Paleo as best I can.
Awesome.
Yeah, very cool. That's a lot of exciting stuff.
Yeah.
That's really great.
Awesome. I did want, so we've got, in case our audience doesn't ask us lots of fun questions, we do have a big old list of I just made a whole list of stuff that we could talk about that's Australia related. I noted that we did 2 episodes this year that are vaguely Australia related. We did an episode about hopping, and we did the Boas and Pythons episode, which both included talk of Australia. But also we've talked about a bunch of Australian news, and I would love to ask you about what was some of your favorite Australia-themed news this year. But before I do that, I would love to ask you specifically about the species that you named this year.
Yes. So, featured in the news for one of your episodes was new research that I published with help from my colleagues. So we described the most complete pterosaur from all of Australia, which is a partial skeleton that was found in Queensland. It was actually found at a site that is publicly accessible. So if you if you go to Richmond in Queensland and you go 6 kilometers out of town and you see a guy there wearing, I don't have the shirt. Oh, I do have the shirt next to me. Wearing a navy shirt that has this logo, Tyrannosaurus corner.
Oh, I love
with
that.
A cap, and his name's Kev. Just dig next to him because he found this incredible specimen. He prepped it. He's the curator at Tyrannosaurus corner, and yeah, it was so much fun to be able to work on that specimen. And yeah, it has throat bones or cerebrobrachials or the hyoid apparatus, whatever we want to call it. I think they're all kind of used synonymously. But yeah, I have very vivid memories of Kev slipping into my DMs being like, I have a piece of bone here that looks like a piece of spaghetti. And I was like, ooh, I know exactly what that is. And that is very, very rare. And yeah, one of them happened to be complete as well. So there were 3 special snowflake features or tapomorphies used to distinguish Helischia from other pterosaurs within that family. And as a bit of a cheat, I said the cerebrobrachial length, this long spaghetti bone, is 70% the length of the lower jaw. We have the complete lower jaw in the specimen, which is crazy. Haven't had that before in an Australian pterosaur.
Oh, awesome.
But a lot of the time, you don't know what that ratio is. So that was my little cheat.
Yeah.
I remember that the headlines were all giant-tongued pterosaur.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Gene Simmons of pterosaurs.
Yes.
Yeah, so that really long, thin bone, it would actually support the tongue. And yeah, depending on how this animal hunted, it might have just been grabbing live prey and then just guzzling them down.
Yeah.
A lot of we probably talked about this. This was all the way back in episode 194, so who knows what we said about it. But a lot of reptiles today, like chameleons are famous for feeding with their tongue, but in a very specialized way.
Yeah,
But,
they have like a ceratobranchial that has like prongs coming off it. Because there was one
Yeah.
paper saying pterosaurs have a chameleon-like tongue, and everyone was like, absolutely
Right.
not. Batman, backhand you, no. They don't have any of those extra muscle attachment sites. It's just a Y-shaped bone.
But lots of lizards will feed with their tongues in a very unspecialized way. They you might pick up your cereal with your tongue and just go, which is a very common thing for reptiles.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, and when we did the tongue episode, I remember things mentioning that some of the ways certain pterosaur tongue elongation seems to be similar to bird patterns, and that they may have been using similar tongue movements and whatnot for feeding. Which makes me immediately go, like, not necessarily to the extreme of woodpecker, but like, did you have a grabby bit on the end to help you, like, get stuff out of a bark and stuff?
Yeah, that's super weird to think about. And then, pterosaurs, like, they've got hollow bones. I don't know, years down the track, maybe someone will find, like, this weird woodpecker pterosaur.
Yeah.
I'm not going to rule anything out. I remain optimistic.
Surely they were getting just as weird as birds get, because
they had more time.
Again, we saw David's shirt before as well. Tupandactylus imperator. Weird boy.
Yeah.
So weird.
Let me turn my head into a, just a giant sail.
Yeah.
Just because. And let me fly around with it.
I always wonder with ones like that, of like, if we were able to watch them fly, would it be weird? Like, were you able to maneuver in, like, weird ways?
I always wonder, like, are you going to see, like, it flap around?
Yeah.
Because it's a membrane of skin.
Oh,
it has lots of soft tissue. So we know then that's where they do, like, the fun colors and stuff. Because it's, I suppose, speculative color instead of speculative evolution.
Yes.
Speculative evolution.
Yeah.
Well, it makes me think of, like, when you see birds in, like, a strong wind and they're, like, struggling. I picture something like Tupandactyls. Did you, like, flip over?
Yeah.
In a strong, would you just, like...
Yeah.
It's terrifying.
Oh.
Oof. I'm actually really interested to... So, you mentioned that Halischia is the most complete pterosaur known from Australia.
Yes.
I know that Australia is rather lacking overall in the dinosaurs and pterosaurs department, or at least in the discovered dinosaurs and pterosaurs department. Are there any, like, trends that are emerging in, like, Australian pterosaur? Is there, like, a flavor of pterosaur that is starting to emerge as the Australian pterosaur assemblage?
Ornithochirid.
Okay.
Which is what it's been like since, like, the first pterosaurs were described in the 80s. Which sucks because I want to find stuff like Tupandactylus imperator. I want to find tapijarids and Tupushuarids, which that word has an X in it, but it is from Brazilian Portuguese, so X is pronounced as a sh noise.
Oh,
so
gotcha. Yeah.
Tupushuarids. Tupushuarids. But yes, and then, like, there's one Asdarchid from Western Australia and Ulna. But yes, I think it's just a classic paleo thing of need more money to find more fossils, to find more stuff.
Yes.
There could be, like, some of these other groups hanging out in museum collections already identified as something else. Earlier in my PhD, so this would have been published in 2020, we thought we had a neck bone from a tapijarid from Victoria, and then it turned out to be a weird type of theropod dinosaur called an Elaphrosaurine, which might have been herbivorous as an adult. So
is this like a
juveniles?
Like
it's like
Lemusaurus?
Yes.
Is one of those?
It's
okay.
like it's closely related to Lemusaurus. I think it's Inextricabalis or something like that.
We skip species epithets because they're hard.
Yeah.
I remember Lemusaurus is a theropod, so of course, typically we think of the two-legged meat-eating dinosaurs, except a bunch of them are also plant eaters.
Yes.
But Lemusaurus, I think, is the one that like loses its teeth as it gets older.
Oh,
Yeah.
Like, the babies have teeth, but then the adults don't have, or they have
they have a
fewer
beak.
teeth,
They
or
have a
they have
beak.
no
No,
teeth.
they have a beak.
Oh,
No
okay.
beak. Adults have no teeth and a beak in Lemusaurus.
Fascinating.
But yes, we have one neck bone from Australia. So are the Australian ones doing that? We don't know.
Yeah,
Again,
not in the
need
neck.
more money,
So-
more fossils.
Yes. Where's Is Lemusaurus African?
It's from China.
Oh, it's China.
Okay,
I'm
yeah,
pretty
that makes
sure.
sense.
I think it's Chehoe
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Well,
To
fantastic.
answer your earlier question as well about what were some of my other like favorite stories, not
Yes.
including my own research, not to stop say this to not be such an egomaniac. The research published by now Dr. Phoebe McInerney about Genionis, the demon duck of doom.
Yeah.
That was a really cool one.
We also talked about that one.
Yep. I got to chat to Phoebe at about this time last year about the research, knowing that it would come out later. And then also from the same research group, so Flinders University, Dr. Isaac Kerr had research published about new species of Australian kangaroo as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're my bias towards vertebrates and like big megafauna and stuff. But yeah, I also just had such a lovely time chatting to both of them about the work that they did.
I do really appreciate that some of the coolest Australian fossil research that has come out this year has been large ground-dwelling birds and kangaroos.
Yes.
Which are very classic Australia.
Yeah.
Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, there's been some other really cool stuff too. What is it? Dr. Miriam, I can't remember her last name. She is from the University of Adelaide, and she published on an assemblage of fossil plants from like down in Tasmania.
Oh, yeah.
And like that point of like Australia separating from Antarctica, but it's not polar yet, but then we're still starting to see like the composition of iconic Australian trees like Southern Beech and that kind of thing, 40, 50 million years old, as Tasmania is figuring out whether it wants to stay with Australia or go to Antarctica.
Right. Mom or dad.
Well, I remember that paper talked about how because this is a rainforest essentially that would have been in a latitude that today it would be ridiculous to find a rainforest. Way far south.
Yeah, high latitude.
But that they also noted that the rainforest in that Tasmanian site had a lot of similarities to similar aged rainforest in places like Argentina that suggested that this was like a polar biome. Like across the southern continents, you would have had these widespread rainforests.
Yeah,
Cool.
but like also like deciduous habit in the leaves, because there would have been months of continuous light, but then months of continuous darkness. And obviously holding onto those leaves, but not being able to photosynthesize with them for months, that's a liability.
Yeah.
Just get rid of it. Don't need it. It's just dead weight at that point. So yeah, you're sort of seeing like the deciduousness and the way you can tell whether a leaf is deciduous or not in the fossil record, or even today, is there's like a little, I think it's called an abscission cut, or like it's kind of like your perforated notebook paper where you can just rip it out easily. You kind of can see that the leaf wants to separate there at that point.
Yes.
But then like also it changes like leaf form and shape, I think. Conifers are really famous for having like a pine needle is like a really weird long tube of a leaf that has become super specialized to what is it? Not lose water,
Mm-hmm.
but also, yeah, hold on to the good stuff and take oxygen and all the stuff leaves are meant to do.
Yeah.
I'm not a paleobotanist.
Next time we'll bring Allie on, and we'll have her.
Bring Allie on. Yeah, bring Miriam on, who published that
Yeah,
research this
that'd
year.
be fun.
Yeah.
One of the coolest things about paleontology that comes out of Australia, I think, is that Australia spent so much of the most famous points in Earth history being so far south that in parts of Australia we get glimpses of biomes that don't exist anymore because these were very far south at much warmer times or times with a different ecological makeup, which is so cool.
Yeah, no, it's very like the deciduous rainforest is not a common concept nowadays.
Yes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then, yeah, talking about summaries for other Australian research that was published this year, there was some really cool stuff about monotremes from Lightning Ridge, which is in New South Wales. So that's one of the really famous fossil localities that produces opalized fossils. So like beautiful, sometimes in some cases, gemstone quality fossils. And yeah, they had, what was it? I think they had like several new types.
Yeah,
for
it was
that
like
locality.
3 or 4 new species or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, yeah, one of them was like nicknamed the echidnapus because like the monotremes we have today are the echidna and the platypus.
Yes.
Two very, very weird animals. Like an echidna has like a very long beak and it has these spines on its back and will curl into a ball and sort of like start to dig down into the ground to defend itself. Whereas a platypus swims around. It has electroreceptors in its bill. And I think males have a toxic spur because it's Australia and it's like, all right, we just have to make it deadly somehow. Just give it a toxic spur. Like if it was God's design team, like the Australian subdivision would just be like, how do we make it kill people?
You're not allowed in Australia if you don't have some sort of venom or some sort of fatal equipment.
No. But yeah, that was really cool because, yeah, even though I don't work on mammals or monotremes at this point, it's still just one of those things to be like, well, were the other monotremes as weird as the echidna and the platypus, or just... Because a lot of paleo art will just kind of... It's like a combination of the two, which makes sense. Like, that's Occam's razor. That's the simplest explanation. But I do have to wonder.
Yeah.
They're both just so weird.
Yeah.
Well, if I remember right from that one, because like they discovered a few new ones, like described a few new ones, but that site also has like 4 or 5 others that were already known. So it's like an assemblage with a diversity, and like that's the other thing that I thought was so cool because we only have the 2 monotremes now. But it's like there used to be environments that were you had everything from tiny, scurrying to fairly robust monotremes, and that was the diversity were monotremes.
Yeah.
That would have been so cool. Wonder what all their eggs look like.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Right?
All the little different colored.
Yeah. Did they have weird eggs?
Yeah. Ooh.
Right? Monotremes hold a special place. Like I did the episode for monotremes, so they got a special place in my heart when and they're just so cool.
I'm thinking about the diversity of monotreme eggs. Just like you have the diversity of reptile eggs. Fascinating. So cool.
Yes.
Wonderful. So a number of people have been asking. There have been some questions coming up in the chat that have been some consistent questions that are Australia-specific questions that I would love to throw your way. A number of people have been asking about just like overall what... I saw some questions specifically about the Mesozoic, and then at least one question that was just geology in general. But let's start with the Mesozoic. What is Mesozoic representation like across Australia?
So biased. Thank you for asking a question that I know.
Yes.
So yes,
This is see,
Mesozoic.
we're experts. We know what we're doing.
Great. Thank you. Softball question, making me feel good. Really using that $40,000 double degree I got at Monash University to answer this question.
Yes,
No, they
right.
didn't sponsor me to say that either. So Mesozoic, middle time period. So um, Triassic, Jurassic, Cretaceous periods. Very, very little surface exposures of Triassic and Jurassic
Okay.
across the Australian continent, which is why there are so few dinosaurs known from those time periods. In terms of Jurassic Age dinosaurs, there's Rhedosaurus browni, which is from Queensland. It's from the rural town near Roma, I believe. Um, and it's a sauropod. Uh, which is it kind of makes sense because like those bones are kind of big and chunky, and
Yeah.
even say a sheep farmer, a cattle farmer would come across them and maybe if they know the rocks in their area would be like, hang on a minute, this is a bit different.
Right. This is not a sheep.
Yes.
Yes, this is not a cow either. It's bigger than that.
Yes.
Yes. So, yeah, most of the Mesozoic aged rocks at the surface across Australia are from the Cretaceous. The Winter Formation, which I've done a lot of work in, it spans like a good part of Queensland, but then also covers like a small bit of the corner of the Northern Territory into New South Wales and I think a bit of South Australia as well. So that is about 96 million years, give or take. But again, like patchy, so you can have yeah, dinosaur age deposits in the Winter Formation. You can also have marine deposits, but have dinosaurs that get floated out to sea in those. So Coonbarosaurus iversi, which is probably the most complete dinosaur in Australia, a small armored dinosaur. I believe it is a nodosaur, so it doesn't have a tail club. But yes, it had fossilized, like its fossilized last meal inside its belly.
Oh,
So
right.
it had eaten angiosperms, which are flowering plants, and ferns on the inside. So yeah, you get those weirdos that turn up. Lightning Ridge, which we just mentioned before, so where those monotremes were, they were hanging about as, you know, the dinosaurs were causing chaos, presumably. And then, yeah, on the Cretaceous coast, well, yeah, on the coast of Victoria, so sort of near San Remo and Inverloch, the volunteer group Dinosaur Dreaming have been doing digs since the 80s, and they've been finding lots and lots of fossils, mostly of ornithopods, so small chicken-sized dinosaurs. But then you might also get claws of megaraptors turn up, and I might have one here. Yes, I do. It's one I prepared earlier.
Yes.
Yes, so this is actually a replica of one of those claws of a megaraptor that was found in Victoria. But we find evidence of these animals in Winton, Lightning Ridge, and Victoria. So they span, I think it's off the top of my head, 10 or 15 million years. If you see someone called Jake Katevsky in the group chat and they're yelling at me, just ignore him. But he will know what the answer is. Hi, Jake, if you're here.
And if you're not, shame. Everybody remember.
Yeah. Everyone else remembered.
I think that it's really interesting that are there particular parts of Australia? I assume that there are certain like corners of the Australian landmass that are better known when it comes to dinosaurs, and I wonder how much of that is that the rocks are preserved there, and how much of it is that that's just where the field work tends to get done.
Yes, to answer your question, yes.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
I think it has to do with how like densely populated areas are, but also, I suppose, taking into account local knowledge of like soil processes and things like that. Um, so I spent a lot of time in Winton, and it was assumed for a long time that the dinosaur bones that you'd find at the surface were what are called lag deposits. So there's like a lot of erosion that goes on, and they just assumed that, you know, the bones that were found at the surface had just been stripped away. But when you talk to the landowners about the soil processes, they have what's called a rotational soil, and it actually brings bones up to the surface. So if you have a few chunks, but you dig down, you might be able to find and reconnect your surface material with your freshly dug bones. So that knowledge has sort of only like really been well understood probably over the last like 20, maybe 25 years, which isn't a lot in the scheme of things.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's just like a really specific local example, like based on my own personal experience.
Yeah, yeah.
Interesting.
But yeah, I mean, you could theoretically look at a geologic map of Australia and go, well, that is mapped as this unit. If I go out, maybe I'll find something. But fuel's quite expensive.
Yes.
Yes.
Having a university sign off on paperwork for you to do something like that, when you could potentially excavate in an area that already has a pretty high success rate, depending on what it is you're looking for, can be a bit harder to do. But if you want to look for dinosaurs in Australia and you have an idea of where you want to dig, maybe you can apply to the Jurassic Foundation, which is an organization, I'm pretty sure, funded by Jurassic Park, like the movie.
Huh.
I think that might be right. I don't know. This might be misinformation. If not, and I'm not in the next Australia live stream, and it's just Travis, you'll know why. It's because I suck and I'm spreading lies.
It's right. We'll edit it out. No one will know.
Great, perfect.
Everyone plug your ears.
You, me, and like whoever else is on the live stream.
Just the three of us and 36 other people.
I have more friends than I thought.
Speaking of your friends,
Popular.
Someone whose name I do not know how to pronounce.
Is it Rory?
Yes, it's Rory. Rory says that Jake is too ill.
Ill?
But
yeah,
wishes
right.
you well.
Jake went to a wedding on Saturday.
The illness is
Cool.
reported to be self-inflicted.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
The Australians.
Travis says, you're right. Travis says, founded by Universal and Amblin. So yes, there you go. You can say you could be in the next.
That's why we need Travis because he's
Travis.
the Jurassic Park expert.
Yes.
So
Yes,
sorry,
so-
Travis, to leave you out.
He's helping. But yes, so you can apply to do field work from this funding organization. They, pardon me, they have 2 rounds of intake a year. I think in September and then maybe early in the year, possibly February. I'm not sure. Jurassic Foundation. Look it up.
Cool.
Yeah. Speaking of finding dinosaurs in convenient places, Miscellaneous has asked, as a proud Central Victorian, what dinosaur species would exist around where I live?
Oh, Central Victorian. Huh. Well, it might be some of our friends that we find on the Cretaceous coast, but you might also just have to get some drill core and dig down and hope to be lucky. Yeah, that's sort of like the reason why we dig on the beach essentially in those situations, because theoretically you could follow that horizon, but you would need to dig through farmland, and yeah, that is very difficult to do. Fun fact, back in the day, they used to just dynamite into the side of an unnamed cliff and basically had like a 24/7 mining operation. Extremely fascinating. I cannot imagine having to coordinate that, having been on digs with members of the public, 12 or 13 people who have all kinds of different occupations, don't necessarily have training in paleontology, and just trying to like stay on top of that and, tell them very nicely, oh, like we're right on the bone. The bone's exposed. It's very fragile. And then you turn around and you see them and they've got a crowbar in their hand and it's like, what part of the brush did you not understand? But I say that, and actually this year I cleaved straight through a sauropod rib with a crowbar. So sometimes I'm the person supervising, sometimes I'm the one with the crowbar in my hand. My bad.
One of the favorite questions that I would get asked from time to time at the museum, usually by a little kid, and usually in like a hushed tone, like they were asking about something secret, they would ask, have you ever broken a fossil?
Mm-hmm. I won't tell.
Did you do a bad thing?
Yeah.
And I would be like, yeah, we break fossils all the time.
They're super easy to break.
They're so easy to break. Well, fortunately, we have this entire room where the specific job is to put fossils
just
together.
Full of glue.
Yes.
I can't even imagine it because I've only dug at the Gray Fossil site where the heaviest tools we use are the hand trowels because it's clay. So like having to use a crowbar to move stone is so intense.
I mean, to be fair, the crowbar was for the soil that we have, which is very clay rich, but it gets really like gluggy and
Oh
dense.
yeah.
I actually went better. I went one better this year. In like a new sort of site that we tried to open and wasn't super successful, there were these big rocks that came up. And I kind of like looked at who was supervising, kind of thought to myself, have they checked all the surface area of those rocks? They're in pretty big things too. So I actually took it upon myself in like 35-degree heat, 35 degrees Celsius. So that's not quite 100 degrees Fahrenheit, but it's getting pretty hot. I spent 8 hours just sledgehammering this rock, trying to see if there was like anything interesting, like work out preferred orientation of any plant material, to work out like, does it have a bedding plane? Like, what is this, like a channel? Like, why is this here essentially? And I might have found a bone, might not have. We don't know yet. Jury's still out.
Sometimes it's hard.
Oh.
There was a story from, I think it was this year at the Gray Fossil site, where Laura and Ray were out in the Mastodon pit, and they found a bird bone, like a tibia or something.
Ooh.
Like, which Gray is exceptionally well preserved, but that's very unusual to find like a nice, well preserved bird bone. And they weren't quite sure what it was or what the idea of it was because it was still out in the ground. And Ray spent like a whole day very carefully jacketing it and taking it out and sending it into the lab, where Sean identified it as a stick.
Oh.
Yep.
So sometimes it's hard to tell right away what you have found
Yep.
until it gets cleaned up and you look at it in the lab.
Yep. We got shared.
Has one of those stories.
Yes.
We got shared a picture on Discord where it was like, are these teeth? Are they shells? And then they were seeds. Well,
Yes.
And it was one of those where it was like, oh, okay, no,
gosh.
now that you say it, yep.
That just gave me like a flashback to my first research project as an honor student. So before I worked on pterosaurs and just started doing side projects on dinosaurs, I worked on amber. And I had spent like over 100 hours looking down a microscope, trying to find like bits of insect, bits of plant. There'd be fungal material that would turn up. And literally, if I saw something interesting, I would have to be like, which kingdom of life? Animal, plant, or the other one? And it was
smaller than a bread box.
And then if I had worked it out, it's like, okay, right. Like, what else can I say about it? But yeah, that was a wild time. I learned to be like very observation led and to describe things based on shape more than anything.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I always like it when you read a paper that'll be like, we identified several teeth and we identified them into 4 morphotypes.
Yes.
And I like when they say morphotypes because that is a very sciencey way of saying we don't know what they go to, but they did.
A, B, C, or D.
Yes, but they did come in a variety of cool shapes.
Yep. The sharp one, the less sharp one.
Yes. Ali asked modern stick or fossilized stick. It was a fossil stick.
Yes.
It was fossil wood. It wasn't wasn't that embarrassing a mix-up. Adele, have you done field work? I know you've done field work in a number of places in Australia. Have you done field work elsewhere outside of Australia?
Mm-hmm.
Where have you done?
I went to Brazil last year to do field work there, which was an incredible experience because I left from my small town to go to Brisbane, like a bigger city, to then fly to oh my gosh, where did we go afterwards? Dubai, to then fly to Rio. And the tiny airport where they only have one plane that leaves a day, they didn't load anyone's bags on because the plane was overweight.
Oh, yeah.
And they just kind of said, oh, we'll just put them on the next plane, the next day. And I said to them, I'm moving between locations in Brazil like every 3 or 4 days. It's not going to catch up. Just leave it. But yes, I had packed like all my carry-on to get through that, thankfully. But it was a wild time. I had so much fun though. I had like a concretion about yay big, and I spent 10 minutes breaking it up. I still have a scar on my hand from when I hit myself with the hammer and made myself bleed with a blunt hammer. And Professor Alexander Kellner, who was the director of Museo Nacional, another pterosaur researcher, we share a birthday.
Amazing.
He said to me, Adele, don't break the hammer. And I'm like, just be quiet, let me do this. 10 minutes hammering this decent sized concretion, and then it just split all of a sudden. My boss's boss had been filming and then stopped because 10 minutes of me hammering isn't that exciting. I was like, get the camera out again. And it was this beautiful fish skull. I can't remember which species it is. There's so many, but this was the Romualdo Formation in Araripe Basin. So it's one of the northeastern states, Sierra, in Brazil. So it's east of where the Amazon is and that area. But yes, we did field work there and it was amazing. It was so lovely. Yes, Alex made our experience was wonderful. Alamo, who was honored with, I think he received a special award at the Society of Vertebrate Paleontology meeting this year. Alamo was an absolute legend. Dr. Renan Bentham as well. The whole team at URCA were incredible. I'm very keen to go back to Brazil. But yes, next year, potentially, a friend is trying to get me to go on digs to maybe Canada and or Brazil. We will see. Yes, again, meant to be finishing this PhD.
Yes.
And doing everything else. So, yes.
Por que no los everything.
Yes.
So when I asked, have you done field work elsewhere? That was a very nice way. So somebody sent us a question via email for you.
Ooh. Oh.
That asked, how did field work in South America compare to Outback Australia? And I was like, did Adele do field work? So instead of saying, hey, this person on the internet is wrong about something,
yes.
I was like, I'm going to ask this question first. But now that we know that, Alyssa wants to know how field work in South America compared to Outback Australia.
It was very similar. So we went to Brazil in late August, early September. So it was 35, 36 degrees. I would have said it was a bit more humid in Brazil than it was in, say, Winton. At that time, they were doing a dinosaur dig at that time in Winton as well. So I chose to go to Brazil because when a nice person says, "Would you like a paid trip to go to Brazil?" you say yes. You start learning Brazilian Portuguese or a little bit. Yeah, so in terms of like climate and like the gear that we used and wore, that was very similar. Um, the formations were very, very different. So, in the Araripe Basin, we wanted to look at the Crato Formation. So, to me, Crato sounds like the word flat. So, they will like get these limestone tiles and they'll use it to create houses, but then they also find a lot of fossils. Um, Fossil fish are super common. And even when we went to the airport in, it was either Rosera de Norte or Sao Paulo, like there were signs at the airport saying don't smuggle fossils. I was like, this is very specific. This
Wow.
also feels targeted. I should also say, like, the fossils that we collected, we actually left with our colleagues and then they sent them over to us with all the
Sure.
paperwork and stuff.
Nice.
And we're actively collaborating with our Brazilian colleagues because we don't want to perpetuate that awful thing of being like very white privileged.
Yeah.
Our team was white. Even though I'm half, I still have a decent amount of white privilege. Going into another area, and then taking their fossils and then studying them. And no, we're not doing that. So we're actively doing this collaboration. It's still ongoing. But yes, where was I going with that? Oh yes, the signs at the airport. Yes, Crato Formation flat. So like things laid out in slabs, and then Romualdo, so you have 3D preservation of things in these big round rocks. Whereas like those styles of preservation are really different to everything else I've seen in Australia. But even though I've done some field work in Richmond, which is where Heliskia is from, and that's limestone as well, the chemical conditions, like the oxidization conditions of the basin and like the redox, if anyone remembers that from chemistry, and like whether there's bacterial mats are involved, all of that stuff means that the fossilization is different. So the really cool thing about going and doing fieldwork in different locations is that every site is different. So even if you have, I think I have like over 30 weeks of fieldwork experience, but that's mostly in Winton. Most of the time when I get to a new area, like when I went to New Zealand as well at the start of the year and like had a try to like look for fossils. I found like a fossil shark tooth, which was very cool.
Yeah.
It was very shiny, very pretty. Like that was totally different as well. And then we were taken around with Mornay, who has like a really cool YouTube channel about like fossil prep and looking for fossils and stuff. He pointed out like this is the type of concretion that normally has like the fossil crabs that are really well known from this area. And I was holding this stupid concretion around like a Pantone swatch guide, looking through all these. I'm like, this is the worst kind of 50 Shades of Grey ever imaginable. I'm like, is this the right color? No. Is this the right color? No. So hence why I just kind of gave up looking for things in concretions and whether there was a bit of fossil crab or anything sticking out. And I just scrambled up the cliff and started like going through looking for tiny things.
That's awesome.
I was wondering when you're talking about the 3D and the rocks, if it was the crabs, because I've seen videos of those where they'll go, whoop, that's a claw. Yep. That's a claw poking out, which is very cool.
When you were in Australia, did you do anything fossily related? I didn't think so.
Yeah, it wasn't part of, like, all the tour stuff was set schedule for the program. And I did not. I was 13 at that time, so I didn't have any connections or anything. There's a couple of times we would pass stuff, and it's like, the road sign just said next exit.
Dinosaurs or
we
something.
could go do we passed by the Australia Zoo and just drove right by it, and we were all like, Like, so there was a couple of times I tried to see if I'd be like, we left early. We all got out of the hotel early. Could we not stop by that place? Because that looked real cool. But no, I didn't get to do anything.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
We'll have to go back.
Yes.
We'll have to go back. We're making connections. We got 30 people right here in the 30 couches that we can hang out on.
Push them all together.
Yes. Listeners, people who are out there in the chat, we're going to keep chit-chatting. If you have questions specifically that you would like to ask of us, but particularly Adele, since Adele is our special guest, go right ahead and put questions in the chat there, and we will read them and we will say stuff about them, and we will use them as prompts. And I'm scrolling through to see. Way early on, Serpentine asked a question about if Adele is now the most frequently recurring guest on our podcast after Allie, which no. Although you might be you're definitely tied with a lot of people.
Yes.
Counting this, you've been on the podcast 3 times now. 3 times?
3 times? Spotlight?
Spotlight.
My
This.
research has been
Your
covered,
research.
but I
That
wasn't
might be.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah, I was going to say, it was like, unless it was the diversity or anything.
Yeah,
Which
I
so.
said it and I was like, no, now this is 2.
Yeah, number of times Pentland has been mentioned.
Yes,
so.
yes.
You do get
if you do
mentioned a lot.
Control F for Pentland.
You find quite a lot of it. Yeah, we don't have a lot of recurring guests, really.
Yeah.
We have a handful that have been on just a couple of times. Serpentine says, oh yeah, I know Dino.
Yep.
Yes, you've been on I Know Dino.
Yes. Yep. Yes. I got a shout out when you chatted to them for Spotlight.
You did, that's true.
I was almost crying in the car when it started happening. I was like, they remember who I am. I was like, do I have to pull over? Am I going to be able to see as I continue to drive? I'm going 110k an hour, so what would that be, like
60?
65 miles per hour? 60? Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Highway speed, 60,
Yeah.
65.
Yes. Yeah, highway.
Yeah, you are a big hit among people that do Paleo Psychom. Sabrina and Garrett really like you. We mentioned you. I think we mentioned you to most of our other Spotlight guests because you were the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so people would be like, oh, who else have you had on for Spotlight? And we'd be like, well, the first one was Adele. And a bunch of them would be like, oh, Adele's super cool. And we'd be like, yeah, Adele is super cool.
Yeah.
It's weird because I still feel like Pals and Paley's so new. Like, I feel like I'm still just such a baby. Like, who starts a podcast in 2023? Like, you know, if you
Who even
didn't get
does
popular
that?
by 2011, why are you even bothering? Other than the fact that, oh no, I saw a meme on Facebook the other day, and it was like, like getting sorted into your house as you turn 30, and it's like, what was it? Obsession with plants, starting a podcast. There was something else as well. Anyway, apparently mine might have been bird watching. I don't know.
Well, just this year, Amy Atwater and Megan Wetherell started a podcast called Weird and Dead. They were our guests on the 9th episode of Spotlight.
They've only been going this year.
Yeah, that's just this year.
Huh.
The two of them have been doing cool stuff together for like a decade because they did Mary Anning's Revenge. They yeah.
That's what I'm thinking.
But like, listen, if Amy and Megan can start a podcast in 2024, if it's good enough for them, then absolutely it's good enough for you.
I'm making fun of myself. Sorry. If anyone is on this and they were thinking of starting a podcast and they were like, well, Adele said I can't now, just ignore me. Shut up. I'm just
shut it down.
Up. I don't know anything.
Adele's just trying to cut off the competition.
But here's a thing, and I think Spotlight proves this. There's not really such thing as competition when it comes to podcasting, because like once you binge all the episodes of your favorite show and then you catch up, you're like, well, you're looking for the next one. So if you find something that's related and you're just like, great, they have a whole bunch of episodes for me to dive into about subjects that I've never heard of or guess I haven't heard of. Like,
Yeah.
it's truly like a rising tide raises all ships
Yeah.
situation.
Well, because like even if I'm only mainly listening to one, I'm still usually aware of the similar ones because they're going to get suggested and I'm going to see crossover. So it's still going to come up in conversation. It's still going to like I'm going to still be what's the word, like slightly towing those others, even if I'm not listening to. I'm going to be adding a little bit of momentum.
Yes. Well, and it's really nice to have those other podcasts out there. Because, like, for example, if we have listeners who are like, oh, I wish you guys would talk about Anomalocaris. It's like, well, we haven't done an Anomalocaris episode, but you know who has done an Anomalocaris episode is this other super cool podcast right there.
Doing its best.
Yeah, the unofficial Yowie podcast. Yowie. For my Australian 30-somethings that grew up in the 90s and remember these things.
That's one of the funniest things I think about Spotlight is how contemporary all of the hosts we talk to feel. Like, we're all the same age.
Yep.
Jurassic Park generation.
Yeah, I feel like all of our Spotlight guests and us are within like a decade of each other,
right?
Which is a very funny, very funny trend.
Yep, it's great.
I'm guessing the young Psychomers are on TikTok or something.
Yeah, that's also a very good point.
They're all not for long, not here.
Don't mention the war. Sorry.
I know a lot of young SciComm people who are real mad, who are US-based SciCommers because the US is planning to ban TikTok. And a lot of US-based SciComm people are going to lose a source of funding.
Income.
An income, rather.
Yeah.
So they'll all be shifting to YouTube and Instagram and all, scattering to the other places.
Yup.
Here's an Australian question. Miscellaneous asks, how long did it take in Australia for major genera to arise after the Cretaceous extinction?
Ooh. Oh boy.
I don't know how good a record is there of like early Cenozoic.
You are asking the wrong person. I'm so sorry.
No problem.
I'm not going to pretend I even know where to look in terms of like answering that question.
I feel like I don't hear a lot about early Cenozoic.
I don't either. No.
I was just having that same moment of like, you hear those stories of the rise of mammals, but usually those stories are coming from other places. I don't think I've heard about like what that looked like on the Australian front.
There's plenty of famous like Pleistocene and even like Miocene sites, I feel like, in Australia.
Yeah.
But I don't know if there's a lot of good Paleocene sites.
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah, that's true. So, it might not be known.
No.
Oh, man.
Might have to drill down through some rocks to find those ones.
Which is a cool, because you mentioned that earlier about like the sites where stuff was coming up, and that there's probably still more of it down there. Which on one hand, that's tough to get to, and that's a barrier. But on the other hand, that means that like in the future, surely there will be,
when erosion gets really out of control because of climate change.
It's
like, going to be a lot easier to get to those fossils.
There's gonna be finds in the future that just are huge and awesome as either things get exposed or construction or things unearth stuff. It's surely a bunch of this stuff we're asking questions about are there to be found. It's just not easy to get to.
That's the beautiful thing about Australia, is that if they start to build like a new car park, they're not going to find some old English king. It's going to be fossils.
Yeah. Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Cool.
Jim asked, can Will dye his hair and beard white to be a more authentic Santa for the next live stream?
I will let you know that I am currently an authentic Santa because Santa was a redhead. Go watch Santa Claus is Coming to Town, and in that version, he's a redhead. I loved it as a kid. When it was like, I watched that and I was like, Santa's redhead.
This is an alternate podcast avenue that we could do, is a Christmas lore podcast.
Yes.
That would be Will with
Oh,
host.
I would have so much fun. So yeah, and I will eventually. So it just is going to be a slow process.
I was gonna say, just wait.
I've already got white hairs. I'm going white, not gray.
Because the sad fact is the Jurassic Park generation has been around for a while
It's
now.
happening.
Yep, I'm getting...
Yeah, I have it in my sideburns and right here.
I found one, and Adele, you might... I don't know if you've experienced this same thing. My hair is quite long, and I've been growing it for several years, and I discovered a hair a while ago that was turned gray halfway up. So it was like dark brown. My hair is dark brown, and it was dark brown for half the length, and then it gradually became gray and was gray the rest of the way.
Watched the toner
You
run
could
out.
see when, yes, you could see when the pigment ran out in that hair follicle.
Yep.
Which was fast. It's long gone now, but it was super interesting.
It hasn't happened to me yet, but when I know, my mum will tell me for one thing, but two, I'll send you a photo just
Send
with
me.
no context
Yes.
on like a piece of colourful card, just this one hair, and be
Yes.
like, it happened.
Yes.
I think I do have a picture of it. Like, I got a couple of pictures of it. And I think I was like so excited. I remember this because I went to like show other people, and I was so excited to like get a picture and show it off that it wasn't until I went to show the picture to people that I was like, not wearing a shirt in this picture. Didn't think about that.
Yep.
And like, it's not obscene, but it was a weird, because I think I was like hanging out with Laura, and I was like, "Ooh, let me show you this picture," and I went, "Warning, I am."
Look at my head.
look at this hair. So I can show you a picture. Just be aware that.
Just edit it real quick.
I'll just
a little
blur
black bar.
rectangle.
Yeah.
Just a little black bar.
little pterosaurs.
If we measured the hair and got average growth rate, we could figure out when the
I did. Yeah, I estimated that it was about 2 years. At the time.
What was stressing me out 2 years ago?
Yes. Oh man, I'll have to look at the timestamp.
Which
Actually,
terrible movie came out?
No, honestly, I can't remember when this was. It might very well line up with COVID.
Yeah. That would make sense.
It might. I'll have to go back and check the timestamp on it. There was a question. Oh, Travis weighed in. Travis, who should be on the live stream, weighed in and said, "From my understanding, we don't have record of the KPG in Australia until well into the Cenozoic.
Okay.
There are major discontinuities."
Yeah.
And Rory has said that Australia's Cenozoic record is spotty.
Yeah.
So that makes sense.
Yeah, the whole Australian record's spotty because it will span.
It's true.
What is it? 560 million years of like life, but yeah, there's just whole patches like missing. Like it's a big continent, and then not all of it is covered in fossil-bearing rocks, because there'll be places that'll have like mines and stuff. Boo, boring. Boring is rock. Boo, boring. Dead things.
But now I really am curious, like, what did the fallout of the KPG look like in Australia? Because in so many other places you get, like, you know, terror bird type stuff taking the place, and like, what was taking the place of that, all those big dinosaurs in Australia, and what were the early mammals that were feeling this new space doing?
Weird monotremes with like some sort of like nutcracker of a mouth.
Yeah, right.
All these seeds and stuff.
Yeah, like, was there what was the transition?
We did speculatively evolve a wacky monotreme in one of our spooky episodes. It was like that. Jack has asked, for all of us, if you could have any extinct organism as a pet, ignoring ethical concerns and personal danger, what's your pick, and what's the weirdest thing about it? Now, we've both answered this versions of this question before. Do you have a go-to ancient pet?
No. Well, can I hear your answers first, and I'll copy your homework and change it a little bit so the teacher doesn't yell at me?
I want a tiny theropod, like a microraptor, some sort of little dromaeosaur or troodontid, because I'm convinced that they would be like cats.
Yep.
Just little and fluffy, and they'd curl up, and they would be selectively social, but also very self-sufficient. You just go, get your own food, you poop in the litter box, but then they would curl up in your lap, and they'd be all adorable.
Well, surely they got the zoomies.
And they would get the zoomies.
Surely they got zoomies. There's no way Microraptor didn't have zoomies.
3-dimensional zoomies.
Yeah. Had to. My answer will always be Cymosuchus, which was a Madagascaran terrestrial croc cousin, fully armored, but about the size of a moderately sized dog, but just this thick, almost ankylosaur-esque armor all over the body, blunt face for eating plants. This rectangle of a face, the widest face to length of any crocodilian, and I just surely. I mean, this probably would be much better for living outside like a goat or something, not actually an indoor pet.
Sure.
But just this little armadillo, rectangle of a little croc. I want it.
Very good answers. I'm looking around at my desk, and I have my all-star plushie that I got from Japan the other day. But I am also someone who works on pterosaurs.
I was going to say, what pterosaur would make the best pet?
Oh my gosh, no! I'm going to become that meme. I'm going to become that meme where the lady just has that massive, Quetzalcoatlus, and it just eats some other person, and they're like, this is my emotional support animal. I need this.
Yes!
That's what I'm doing.
The great thing about a Quetzalcoatlus is that you don't have to take your emotional support Quetzalcoatlus onto a plane. You just ride your emotional support Quetzalcoatlus.
Perfect. No airport security for me.
That's right.
Easy, simple.
Picturing it.
Watching the movie is going to be hard.
Yes.
I will say.
Yes. On your phone.
Yeah. But the noise cancelling and my earphones just isn't quite cutting it.
You keep losing signal.
Yeah. Oh, no free Wi-Fi. That's terrible.
Stick a router on that pterosaur.
Oh, I'm picturing it as a pet just suddenly gives. I bet they were so loud. I bet just this
loud, aggressive, beak clacking, if they're annoyed.
Yeah, and when you hear beak clacking for big birds, it's so a beak that that.
A 7-foot long head.
It'd be like the clackers.
I'm sorry, a 2-meter long head.
Just be pow.
Yeah, it would be like the
that I don't know the name of that instrument, that clacker that they use for the whip cracks and stuff in songs.
Yes. I bet pterosaurs would also be. I bet a Quetzalcoatlus would also be smelly.
Yeah.
Just the way that big animals are smelly.
Yeah, but also if Quetzalcoatlus is that big, and probably I think it's been suggested that they ate meat or carrion. That's gonna be some smelly bad booze and stuff.
Yes, absolutely.
Bad. But again, no one's stepping to me when I am one of the support animals. So
right?
I'll just be a menace to society. Perfect.
Cool. Yeah.
Gemfire says instead of sounding like a machine gun, it would sound like a cannon.
Yes. Yeah. Right.
Yes.
Well, it's the what's it? Spoonbills.
Yeah, the spoonbill that goes.
Have you ever seen videos of spoonbills, modern spoonbills doing the beak clacking?
I'm gonna look it up.
Everybody look it up when we get off this call. legitimately sounds like machine gun fire.
It sounds fake.
It sounds fake. It's
Wow.
crazy. So yeah, Quetzalcoatlus would just be like, boom. Oh, and they could like communicate.
Well, but
Well, you'd
would
be
they
like,
be like Crocs, where Crocs do the head slap? Would they just do like one big,
Oh.
and it'd just be this whip crack of a sound that went off?
you would have to have like acres of property, because otherwise your neighbors would be so mad that your Quetzalcoatlus was making noises all the time.
Yep.
Like people who have like peacocks.
Well, that's why I thought when you were saying as a pet, it's like, I'm just picturing that like the thing birds do, where it's just quiet, and all of a sudden, and just does that one loud noise that a bird will do. But it's, it's a few meters up in the air and huge, and just this siren across the neighborhood.
Gemfire has corrected us. Shoebill, not spoonbill.
Yes,
That is
shoebill.
That is correct. Thank you.
Spoonbills do still clack their jaws, but it's unsurprisingly not as loud and just sounds like clacking spoon. It's just it's not nearly as impressive.
There was a question up here that JR asked, who said, a question for Adele. Have you encountered many people with anti-evolution beliefs in your career? Listening to Common Descent, it seems like Will and David have experienced it fairly often. This is something we've talked about, that we live in a particular country and a particular state in that country where that is fairly common.
Yes.
I don't know if however much you're comfortable and willing to talk about it, how common that is in Australia.
Like, if I encountered them, it would have been when I was working as a tour guide at a dinosaur museum. Like, I will do, like, science communication. Like, yeah, did a panel this year, recorded terribly with the dodgiest setup in the world.
Yes.
All of the people there were on Team Fossil Earth is, billions of years old, not made in 6-7 days.
Sure.
I can't remember any instances off the top of my head. I know, like, some of my colleagues at the dinosaur museum, like they'll have instances where they've been doing their tours and someone's asked a question maybe at the end, like say the fossils around inland Queensland, central western Queensland, the Arramanga Basin, one of the big like inland seas that went in, they'll ask a question and tie it to the Great Flood.
Yes.
Sure. We would get that at the Grey Fossil
that,
site
yeah.
because it was a pond deposit, and it's clearly like Great.
Stratified, like,
So it's like this, and we would talk about
Weird
it. This was laid down underwater, and sometimes people would go, "Oh, okay," so and then draw a connection to the Great Flood concept.
Yeah, I had also heard instances of like someone doing a tour, but then like the stragglers at the end being like maybe a family with their kids and saying like, well, this is actually this, like they're doing their own tour.
Yep.
Like their family.
We would get that at the museum sometimes.
Yeah. I don't remember any instances like that personally.
Yeah.
But I also know that I have a habit of just blacking out bad experiences sometimes. So it could have happened, and I could have just seen missing, deleted it from my memory.
Not worth saving.
The deleted scene thing is my Simpsons quote for this. I had to get one in there because it's another calling card of mine. That and Yowies.
Oh, sure. For Travis. That was for Travis's benefit as well.
Yeah.
Who I understand is a big ol' Simpsons nerd.
Yeah. Has written pieces in something called The Conversation about Simpsons. Yeah.
Wacky.
Expert level.
This is what you get to do. You be a professional nerd. This is how it works. Fantastic. We are approaching the end of our time for our live stream. Adele, I know that audience, feel free to please continue to ask us questions and say things, and we'll answer and talk to you right up until we're done. But I know that you've got like cool stuff coming up and things that you want to mention that are coming up in the future. Feel free to do that before we start losing people as we start to say we're going to wrap up.
Yeah, absolutely. So next year, hopefully, I will be presenting at the Conference of Australasian Vertebrate Evolution, Paleontology, and Systematics, which will be held in South Australia, hosted by Flinders University. So we mentioned them at the start when we talked about the Genionis research and the giant extinct kangaroo research. Both of those PhD students, now fully fledged doctors, are part of the Flinders research group. So really looking forward to that. I would love to do a workshop at that conference as well, seeing if they let a student run a workshop. Who knows? Maybe, maybe not. Yes, what else?
Tell them that you're a recurring guest on the Common Descent podcast. That'll
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, it's
that'll
either that or
bump it right up there.
hopefully I'll get another. Yeah. Otherwise, yeah, I'll just increase my number of mentions or something on the podcast. Would love to try and publish another lead author paper next year.
Yeah.
Depending on how much time I have and how everything works out.
If you publish something cool, we will absolutely talk about it on our podcast.
I
'Cause
just
you-
have to find a weird angle.
You publish stuff that gets headlines, which is
Yes.
that's like the requirement most of the time for getting into our news section is we like to have popular articles we can share with our
Something
audience.
accessible.
Right.
It
And
helps that I will write those myself sometimes as well. But yes, it is also very good that
that
people
Yeah.
will,
I used to do that at the museum.
Yeah.
I would write a paper would come out and I would go cool, and then I would write the press release, and then we would share that when we talked about it in the news on the podcast.
amazing behind the scenes of what is actually happening.
Right.
Yeah, I have the good fortune of working on a group that name ends in saw, so
Yeah.
people think that they're dinosaurs, which pterosaurs aren't. But
Well, and
if a small child says a pterodactyl is their favorite type of dinosaur, I'm like, you're on the right team.
Yeah.
But if a 20-year-old says that to me, oh boy, they're getting a full-blown lecture.
yeah.
Can't be doing that.
Well, also, your animals make really great paleo art. Like, I think that helps it huge, because even if you don't know that they're not dinosaurs, they look so cool. And you put a big picture of a giant, winged creature up on a news piece, people are going to want to click on it. They're cool looking
absolutely.
animals.
Yeah, and I've had the good fortune of working with some really great paleo artists as well. Rory, who jumped in the chat and ratted out our other friend Jake. He's done like paleo art he did paleo art for the Hiliskia paper. The
cool.
main one that we used was by Gabriel Gueto, who is super prolific. But yes, you are right. Having nice paleo art makes a massive difference, which is also why it's really important that we don't use AI to do these things, because
Oh, yeah.
if I'm describing a new species to science, AI can only tell us or mesh things together based on what's already out there.
Mm-hmm.
The world hasn't ever seen this before, so I need someone to do it by hand, and yeah, it makes an absolutely massive difference. So yes, hopefully new research, hopefully presenting at conferences, hopefully new episodes of the podcast will be out, and then yes, hopefully I will be going interstate across Australia at a few different points depending on the timing of things happening, and then yes, hopefully maybe some international field work as well. Knowing my luck, everything will be scheduled all at the same time, and I'll have to only pick one of the very cool things to do.
Like that. Here's hoping you have as little overlap as possible.
Yes.
That'd be nice. Thank you.
Serpentine asked, still doing the jewelry?
Ah, yes. I used to sell dinosaur themed jewelry. I don't think so. I don't have capacity to do it at the moment. And I don't really have any of that gear or equipment with me because I recently moved interstate as well.
Mhm.
So, yes, I have less space for it. And then if I did have the space, obviously I'm going to fill it with my hypothetical Quetzalcoatlus like support animal
Yes.
Absolutely.
rarities.
Extremely. Well, and then you just charge admission for
Yes.
people to come see Quetzalcoatlus, and you make a ton of money off of that.
Yeah.
You can charge whatever you want. And,
Yeah.
and people
I mean,
will
like
pay.
my research might be harder because I will have to go through animal ethics, which is something that I've not had to do yet.
True.
But, you know,
Yeah, you
science.
gotta weigh the.
Yeah.
Well, fantastic, Adele. This has been super fun.
This has been great.
It's definitely worth staying up until 5 o'clock in the morning to hang out with you and all of these lovely people in the chat.
Before we started recording, and I said, oh, my ex-farmer brain thinks that 5 a.m. is like an early wake up. I hadn't realized that you'd stayed up all night.
Yep.
Oh yeah. Well,
We are two very different type of people.
Like it is very difficult for me to get myself to bed before midnight, regardless of what I'm doing the next day.
I have always been like that. These days, for various perfectly reasonable and very intentional reasons, I tend to go to bed at like 3 or 4.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa. My gosh. A lot of the time, like, I'm looking at the time now. This is past my bedtime now. It's not even 10:30 yet. But yeah, depending on what's happened in my day, sometimes I'll look at the clock and it won't even be 9 o'clock and I'll be like, is it too early to go to bed?
That's because you are the Jurassic Park generation, and those gray hairs are starting to come in.
They drain my energy.
My girlfriend's much more in that category. I've always been a night owl. I have to now shift it because I have the school schedule stuff, so I have to actually get up and teach kids, and they make them start school way too early.
Oh yeah, you guys do things real different over there.
It's yeah.
I thought 8 a.m. lectures were bad enough when I was in uni. Ugh.
It's like that's
And they were.
that's when my classes start. The kids have already been there for like 2 hours by the time my class starts, and it's
Wild.
when they come in grumpy. I'm like, no, I get it.
Yeah.
I was in middle school at once and had to get up while the sun was still rising to then get myself onto the bus, and that's the worst.
Yup.
Character building.
Right.
Traumatic.
Yep. It's got to add that trauma to make you an interesting character.
Add it to your backstory.
Listeners,
See whether it becomes part of your villain arc.
Yes, exactly.
To all of our listeners, people who have joined the podcast, the live stream, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a whole bunch of fun. I'm thrilled to see we had like 30 plus people join this live stream, which is extremely cool because A, always great to hang out with our fans. B, awesome to get to share, not just share like our audiences, but also we love bringing in other faces and voices. But also because this feels like a proof of concept that this wacky idea that we came up with is worth it and people respond to it.
It was a lot of fun.
Which means that there is the potential that maybe we'll do more stuff like this in the future. And do, specific things cater to our friends and colleagues on the other side of the world that miss out on all of our other US timed things. Fantastic. And Adele, thank you so much for joining us, for or going through the rigmarole of figuring out a schedule and a time and all those things that go into this kind of stuff.
No, that's all good. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for having me as a guest for, Common Descent Spotlight series. It made such a massive difference. And considering, I'm putting that in, resumes and, cover letters and stuff, I'm sure it will continue to make a massive difference. So thank you so much for, the cross-promotion, the cross-pollination, interconnecting, the paleo science communicating community. Yeah, and of course, my favorite Spooky. Thank you for like filling my cup, giving me my comfort podcast episodes that I listen to when
Yeah.
I'm very, very stressed.
Oh my goodness,
Yeah.
that's lovely. It is our absolute pleasure. You do fantastic work. We are thrilled to be able to support you and elevate you. Also, let's keep doing. Let's collaborate more in the future because this is super fun.
Yes.
Listeners, you let us know what you want us to do in the future with Adele, and hey, maybe we'll invite Travis next time. Let us know what sort of stuff you'd like to see us do, other than us going to physically visit Australia and tour around the country, which obviously,
Yes.
But just go to our Patreon to support us financially.
Yes.
And also go check out Pals and Paleo, which is a relatively young podcast, but tons of fun. Formatedly rather different from Common Descent. You have a lot of guests on, which is great because that means we're covering different flavors of podcast that will appeal to people. So everybody go check that out. Is there anything else that we have to say?
Not that I can think of.
Great. Adele, is there anything else that you want to mention or shout out before we end the stream?
Be kind to yourself, look after your mental health, drink more water, because if you're like me, you're not drinking enough water. I just realized that I'm doing my like classic podcast sign off.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, times are tough. Be gentle with yourself. It is the festive season. It's the silly season. Don't get obligated into doing things that you don't need to do. Protect your energy.
Yeah, absolutely. Enjoy end of the year stuff, whatever you're doing.
Play Lego Star Wars instead of going to the staff party if you don't want to go.
Yes.
That is an incredible, yes. All of that.
Lego Star Wars, the Skywalker's edition is free on Epic until December 12th.
Ooh.
That's why I was playing it earlier.
Also, Marvel Rivals just came out, which might be the first time that I play that style of game because it looks super cool. I want to be doing that. Wonderful. Very well said, Adele. Everybody, Australians, enjoy your evening. Will and I are going to go to sleep. And that's, we're going to go ahead and end the stream. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. We'll do a sign-off phrase.
Bye!
Ended.
Good stuff.
Great. Wonderful.